Welcome back. In this notes, we're going to continue talking about long division. However, we're going to talk about what if we're missing a term. Okay, so for everything to line up right, if you're missing a term, you need to make sure that you put a 0 as a placeholder. So what I mean by that is here, when I'm setting this up, x minus 8, x squared, I'm actually going to write in 0x, so I have that placeholder there. Okay, that placeholder is going to be very important in order for it to line up. So really, that's the only new thing for today, is making sure we have that placeholder 0. Other than that, our process is the same. I'll look at this x and see what will it take to cancel x squared. Well, x times x gives me x squared. So I'm going to multiply that whole thing by x. And I'm going to write that in now and subtract it to see how close I got. Well, x squared minus x squared cancels. And then 0 minus negative 8. And again, minusing a negative is essentially the same thing as adding. So 0 plus 8, well, that will leave me with 8x. And I pull down my next term. I do that process again. I see, what will it take for x to go into 8x? Well, I need to multiply it by 8. So I take that 8 and I multiply it through. So that's going to be what I put in the next phase, x squared minus 64. And I'm going to subtract that off. 8x minus 8x leaves me 0, just like I wanted it to, cancels out. Negative 74 minus a negative 64, again, basically means you're adding. Negative 74 plus 64, type that into your calculator, and you're going to be left with a negative 10. Well, I have nothing more to pull down, so what that means is that negative 10 is my remainder. Whenever you have a remainder, you want to leave it over the piece of the fraction you were originally dividing by. And then that is going to be your final answer. Moving into our next example. Take that x minus 5, and it's dividing x squared. Again, put a 0 as a placeholder. But from here on out, everything is the same. What will it take for x to cancel x squared? Well, I'm going to have to multiply it by an x. So the x is going to multiply that entire x minus 5. So leave you with x squared minus 5x. Again, you subtract it off to see how close did I get. The x squareds cancel just like we wanted them to. 0 minus a negative 5 is the same thing as adding 5, double negative. So you get 5x. And you pull down the 28. All right, same story now. I take that x and I see what is it going to take for it to cancel 5x. Well, I'm going to have to multiply it by 5. So I take that x minus 5, I'll multiply the whole thing by 5. That's going to give me 5x minus 25. All right, so that's the next piece that I'm going to subtract off. 5x minus 5x cancels just like I wanted it to. Negative 28 minus a negative 5, or a negative 25, well, double negative, that's the same thing as adding 25. So type that into your calculator, and you're going to end up with negative 3. All right, well, again, there's nothing more to pull down, so that means that negative 3 is my remainder. And because it's my remainder, I have to leave it with the fraction. And that'll be your final answer. All right. There is one more example that I want to do with you. One more example to show you that you can get longer problems here and it still works out. So my x plus 2 is dividing my x cubed plus 7x squared plus 14x plus 3. I'm going to show you that this does work out the same way. What will take from my x to cancel off an x cubed? Well, this time I'm going to need an x squared to accomplish that. Okay, I'm going to need more x's than I needed before. So I'm going to take that x squared and multiply it to the x plus 2. That's going to give me x cubed plus 2x, or plus 2x squared, when I distribute that in. X cubed plus 2x squared. And again, as always, I subtracted off. Well, that got rid of what I needed it to. 2x squared or 7x squared minus 2x squared. 7 minus 2, that leaves me 5 of them. And of course, I want to pull down my next term. All right, well, I need to do my process again. So I need to take that x and see what will it take to cancel 5x squared. Well, I need a 5. And then for x to become an x squared, I'm going to need one more x in there. So this time, I'm multiplying by 5x. So when I do that, so 5x times x is 5x squared. 5x times 2 is 10x. So that's going to be the next thing that I multiply by, 5x squared plus 10x. And again, I want to subtract it off to see how close did I get. 5x squared minus 5x squared, that should always cancel. That's the point of this, is that that would cancel. 14x minus 10x is going to leave me 4x. Then I bring down my 3. Now I can actually do this process one more time in this case, because that x, I can multiply it by 4 for it to cancel that 4x out. All right, so I'm going to multiply that whole thing by 4. And that's going to be the next thing that I multiply it by now. So I need to scooch this down. 4x plus 8. I subtract it out to see how close I get. The first thing cancels just like I always want it to. 3 minus 8 will leave me with a negative 5. Well, now I'm out of things to pull down. I can't use x to cancel a negative 5. So this time I'm actually done. All right, so that negative 5 becomes my remainder. And this whole thing becomes my answer. So again, just a little fun thing to show you that you can lengthen this process. Okay, you can divide more than just quadratics. You can divide cubics and quartics and all those fun things. So all it does, it gets longer, but it doesn't get any harder along the way. So thank you for joining me. Please make sure you have all this written down, again, because writing this down is the best way to have the tools you need when you're doing your practice work.